And welcome back to the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. Jason Bryant here with you. Keeping on the book theme today, but also talking history, talking with one of the great minds of the sport of wrestling for the last half century. Dr. Bill Welker from West Virginia is coming on the show. And, I don't have to spend all this time on the intro. I'm just going to bring Dr. Bill on right now. Dr. Bill Welker, we were talking pre-show that we've been interacting for probably 25 years at this point since I started Matt Talk Online, and you had a column started back in the 70s called Matt Talk. So one, welcome to the program. It's been a long time coming. And two, Matt Talk, where did you come up with your version of Matt Talk?
I did thought, well, I will be talking about wrestling. So I just came up with Matt Talk, basically. It was just a real kind of a simple thing to go with. And it started in the Wheeling newspaper, and then it ended up, they used it at Steubenville newspaper. Even Parkersburg, West Virginia, for a couple of years was using the column. So it got around quite a bit. And a lot of the stories that I wrote in the column, I also had published in Wrestling USA magazine for Lanny Bryant. No relation.
No relation. Yeah, I got that one a lot when I was starting to come through. But
that's what I think. That's what I figured.
I get that one a lot. But whenever I see Cody and Lanny, I'll be like, Mr. Bryant. And they look at me, Mr. Bryant. So yeah, great family of wrestling up there in Montana. So let's start with you. You wrestled in Pennsylvania. Wrestled high school in Pennsylvania. Was it Shamokin, right? That's how you say it?
Yes, Shamokin, PA. I actually started wrestling in third grade in 1955. Can you believe it? 70 years. 70 years, and it's just amazing how the years fly by. But I wanted to talk about when we wrestled. My brother and I were both very fortunate to be state champions. We really feel that way. There were actually 4 weekends. You wrestled first. You wrestled sectionals, then you wrestled districts, then you had the regionals, and then states. Now get this. It was all one division. At that time, there were approximately a little bit over 500 schools that had wrestling. Whatever level you lost at, you were done. You were done. There was no third or fourth place. It was just first or second. So let's say you were second in regionals. You're done. You don't go to states. Only the regional champions went to states. It was like being second in a gunfight. You had to win.
There is no winner in a gunfight, right? Without some medical help, but I get what you're saying there. So back in it was basically everything was a knockout format. Like they say, it's a knockout. You're done.
Yeah, that was it. So then states were at Penn State's Rec Hall, and just a champion from each 4 regions went to states. So those first matches were 2-1, 3-2, overtime. I mean, it was the best of the best going right away. And that was one of the things I wanted to mention today. Of course, today now we have the different divisions from your region or whatever. Maybe about 4 or 6 kids can go to states. And you might have noticed this too, Brian. Those first matches, lots of pins, because there's just so many kids getting to go to states, and of course we know the reason why. Money talks, and I think part of it is to make money, and of course it does give more wrestlers exposure. But as I feel today, I like the idea of being a true state champion. If I knew there was another state champion at my weight class, I would have went over to him and said, "Hey, let's go downstairs and see who's the best." Well, that's so I kind of like the way we did it back then. Maybe more wrestlers could have went to states, fine, but at least you had one true state champion, and I take my brother, we take kind of pride in that. That's old timers. And the other thing, I don't know if you'll agree or not, we were all homegrown. There wasn't any recruiting back then. We were all homegrown. Our coach, who was one of the initial coaches to be inducted into the Pennsylvania Hall of Fame. Produced 8 state champions and 8 state runner-ups. Now today that doesn't seem like much. Back then, it was unbelievable. We're a very small town. It was a small coal mining town, and to produce that many state champions was quite a remarkable feat. I was very fortunate. I had a head coach and assistant coach. They're both in the Pennsylvania Wrestling Hall of Fame and in the Pennsylvania chapter of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. We were very fortunate to have good coaches. Very, very fortunate. But yes, and like I say, it was homegrown. And the other thing too, I don't know how to explain it, but when we went to college, we were more student athletes.
Mm-hmm.
There was no red shirting or gray shirting or what have you. You were there to wrestle, do the best you can, but you're also there mainly to get the education. Things have changed quite a bit since then. I'm not saying it's wrong or bad
A
or
little
anything.
bit. They've changed
Yeah,
just a little bit.
I mean, when one university has practice wrestlers who could probably be all Americans, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, Penn State's just unbelievable. It's just wow, you know. But that's kind of how I feel. I personally, I'm a firm believer the good old days were the good old days.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple states that still do this. I know Indiana has a one class system, and they have a knockout type of format where they call it the state finals. They don't call when they all come together in the one, all the sub states, and that's still a very tough, like first round losers, bye, you're done. And then of course we know about California, New Jersey. I personally like New Jersey's system the best because they determine their team titles with the dual meet, the school sizes, and then their individual tournament is one class. I like that. Kentucky's one class. A couple of the smaller New England states are one class. So the one class is still around. It's just we're not quite like your neighboring state and my home state of Virginia, which went to 6 publics, and the private schools are mostly separate. A couple years ago, meaning I think we crowned 96, if my math's right, 96 state champions a year in Virginia. Whereas, West Virginia's got the 14 weights, and I guess the 3A and then the 1A, 2A is how they've got that separated. And the duels are 3 classes, right, in West Virginia? There's
no,
the 1A, 2A.
The duels, single and double A go together.
Okay, so it's just okay, gotcha. So, in bringing that together, let's talk about going from your old days to settling in West Virginia. You've been in Wheeling for decades now, and Wheeling Park was one of those name programs in West Virginia. Of course, those who know West Virginia wrestling, they'll know the names that come through, like the Mitch Smiths, the Easters, the Braxton Amos more recently. But you've got the Parkersburgs, you've got the Parkersburg Souths. Then you've got Ripley, you've got Nitro, you've got out in Beckley Springs. So you've got good pockets of wrestling in West Virginia. What was wrestling in West Virginia like when you got there, and what was it like growing something in Wheeling?
Well, it was just starting to grow in the Wheeling area. As a matter of fact, my coaching comrade, his name is Eric Carter, and I started the small fry wrestling program back in Wheeling back in 1977, and it's still going strong. And it's kind of a nice theater program, not just for Wheeling Park, but also for Wheeling Central Catholic High School. And we have a private school, Lindsley, that has wrestling as well. So it's kind of built up, and we were big on fundamentals. We worked a lot on arm bars, of course, your half Nelsons, but the big thing we worked on was cradles. And there's an old saying, "What's the best defense to a cradle? Don't get in it." And if I'm not mistaken, and David Taylor, outstanding, great wrestler, but if I'm not mistaken, his freshman year in the finals, I believe he was pinned by a cradle.
Yeah,
Pretty
that
sure.
was a cradle.
Yes, and like I said, don't get in it. But it grew from there. Uh, we had three state championship teams when I coached there. I coached till 1980, and then I got involved with the officiating. But the big pockets are Point Pleasant is the tough double A team right now to beat. In triple A, it's University High School. That's in Morgantown, and Parkersburg High School is right up there as well. So it's going to be a battle between, I believe, University and Parkersburg this year for the triple A state championship. Double A, I'd have to go with Point Pleasant. They just have total team strength. And single A is a small coal mining town, Cameron, West Virginia, and I think they will probably run away with the single A state championship this
And they
year.
wrestle single A and double A together, but they
Yes,
determine the champion with the team score. So they're in the same tournament, but it's the highest placing single A team is determined the single A
yes.
champ. Okay.
Okay, now, so there is a possibility you you could be the outstanding wrestler in single A, but only place third in your weight class because you're wrestling double A together with single A. It hasn't happened yet, but it could. It could happen.
Well, you're
You
probably gonna, usually even the small schools will have a hammer come through. That's right there, going to be definitely be in the finals. Now, one
Is
thing
it,
that, go ahead.
I was going to say, you're absolutely right. My step grandson, his name Isaac Martin. He won the 215-pound weight class. At Wheeling Central, who last year was Class A, and so he also was the Class A outstanding outstanding wrestler last year as a sophomore.
I got to
At
say
two,
this too about West Virginia, and Kyle Brackey used to work at Flow Sports. He works at WVU now. He's always been beating the drum for his home state and whatnot.
right?
Now I go back and where you've been writing for years. Your stuff you can find, even your archive and stuff, is at wvmat.com. And I'll say this about West Virginia and the folks that have been putting on wvmat.com. You want to talk about one of the first websites that covered high school wrestling at the state level. I mean, it was when I was around, it was around. When I was around the first time. So there's a lot of archives there. There's a lot of history there. And that's just been a great resource for old wrestlers, but also for like new wrestlers. There's a lot of resources there that website provides the state of West Virginia. So that's one thing I've always been impressed with the state and those people behind that independent resource.
Yes, it started by a Dr. Miller. Started that back in the early '90s, and he's really worked hard on it. And Jenny Hanna now has taken taken over. She does a tremendous job as well, and they really work hard at it. Actually, Dr. Miller asked me back in the mid '90s. He said, "Bill, can we put some of your Mad Talk columns, on the website?" I said, "Sure. Put them all on. That's great. That type of thing." But he was looking for all different resources and what have you. It is a great website. They do a great job. I have nothing to do with their website. It's Dr. Miller and Jenny now.
Well, this also goes back to your time writing. You talked about the newspapers earlier and Wrestling USA magazine, which unfortunately has
Yes.
basically gone the way of the dodo at this point. But again, the Bryants have done a great job. The move from the print media. Mike Finn just retired this week at Win magazine after
Wow.
almost a half century working in sports journalism. And we look at the evolution. Wrestling has basically it went from being a magazine sport. It went being from running to the mailbox to look at the scores in amateur wrestling news. I have 50 years of them behind me right now. I will still refer to them if I need to look up some stats or whatnot. As a matter of fact, I get that question quite a bit, almost daily. But now we've been an internet sport for coming up on 30 years. Intermat, when it was really launched, I remember checking into the library to be able to look at Intermat back in 1996.
Mhm.
WVMat's been around for a while. I launched Matt Talk in 1997, the first version, the Matt.com and Joe LaRue before USA Wrestling had it. The real evolution of being able to put the written word on the internet. How has that helped you kind of expand your writing. And also, right now we wouldn't be talking if we hadn't found each other on the internet almost 30 years ago. So this has given writers and wrestling writers an opportunity to really hone their craft, but also expand and kind of be advocates and evangelists for the sport of wrestling.
Yeah, yeah, it really has expanded. It's given you more a wider audience, a gigantic audience that you didn't have locally or whenever. Even the magazine, like for example, with Wrestling USA magazine and Amateur Wrestling News. I'm not sure, how many subscribers they have, but it's probably just a few thousand. When you're on the internet, you're talking hundreds of thousands. I mean, you're
Mhm.
talking everybody, everywhere, is really, being able to read it. It's funny you mentioned that. I have a friend of mine who's now going to be the sports information director at West Liberty University. Uh, the gentleman, he went to the gentleman who was the former sports information director. He said, you were a writer, you wrote it, and I'm a broadcaster, because he was a sports editor for a local TV station. And the old uh, sports information director said, "Don't worry, nobody reads anymore anyway." He kind of feels that way. Everybody just wants to listen. Hear things are too lazy to read at times. Uh, no, it's really been with the internet, it's just unbelievable. And think of this, Jason. I use it, I do. We use it for writing and just about everything you can think of. What did we do when we didn't have this? If we lost our computer today, we'd be panicky.
I am still a very analog individual. If you're not watching this and you're listening to the audio, I've got a stack of, I keep legal pads. I write everything down. That's how I retain a lot of stuff. I've always found, like, when I was in college, we start bringing the laptops. I couldn't retain my notes if I didn't write them down. So I am still a
Right.
very pen and paper. I still want to have the written brackets. Now I catalog a lot of stuff on spreadsheets and whatnot. But I just being able to write my to-do list down and cross it off, there's that satisfaction. Being able to write your notes and jot down your ideas. I did a little notes column that'll be released later this week. And I wrote down, I was like, okay, here are the numbers, here are the numbers, here are the numbers. These are the things that I follow. So I'm still very analog, man. Hopefully pen and paper, I don't think will ever go away for those that really, really, really need to
Well,
rely on it.
like when you were in college, when you studied, I was the type that had to write it down. I would write down and write something down repetitively, studying for an exam or what have you, and then I'd go over what I wrote down. That's the kind of learner, the style learner I was. Sounds like you might have been the same way as far as studying.
I am also going to say, me and my college roommate found our study habits involved white noise, and sometimes that white noise was a bar, and sometimes that white noise involved note cards that we had written down. So again, it was written down. So in talking about writing and writing things down, let's go back to a lot of the things you're also known for is your books. Now, there's the novels that you've got written, and it's also kind of fitting that this year is the 40th anniversary of the release of the movie Vision Quest. But Vision Quest was a novel written by Terry Davis, who is being inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame this year. So we have a wrestling novelist being inducted, and we have a wrestling novelist
Good.
on the show. So let's just start with the difficulties, I guess, in trying to write a wrestling novel. It's a
Well,
niche
first,
sport. It's a niche sport. You've got to get a hook on it. I mean, a lot of these novels are young adult type of novels for a young reader.
yes.
So the genesis of an idea, and then finally making sure that, all right, we can do this.
Well, first of all, let me kind of when I retired. Well, actually, before I retired, and this is really amazing. First, I always wanted to write a technique book on wrestling from some of the things I learned from my coaches. But I was a West Virginia teacher, so we didn't make a lot of money, and so that dream I thought would never come true. Back in 2003, I get this email out of nowhere from Human Kinetics Publishing. They asked if I would edit, the editor and chapter author of a wrestling drill book. That was in 2003. The first edition came out in 2005. I don't know if it, can you see the book
Oh
at all?
yeah. Okay. So if you don't see this on the screen, if you're listening, you will, if you've ever seen the wrestling drill book, I don't know how to describe it other than to tell you you've seen this book. It's the yellow and red is something about it. You've seen it on the internet. It used to, you could see it on Amazon. Like you search wrestling drill book on
Right.
Amazon, you will know that cover because every library in the country, if they had one wrestling book, they had this one.
Well, then the first edition did so well. We did a second edition, and like I said, it just came out of nowhere, and I was just so excited because it didn't cost me any money. They were taking all the chances, and what I did learn, Jason, because I'm not a businessman, how important marketing is. You got to spend money to make money, and then I'll get back to that in a little while. Anyway, at this point, close to 37,000 copies have been sold uh, nationwide and in England and in Canada, all over the place. But it's like I say, that's how I kind of got started into the writing. That gave me the money to do some self-publishing, and that's how I got into the novels. And that was for me. I started with what would be a good ending. I wanted a good ending first before I even started writing, and I wanted each ending to be a little bit like, "Wow, I didn't expect this. Didn't expect this to happen." Uh, my first novel was called A Wrestler's Curse, and that'll have a lot of meaning uh, throughout the book. But the ending is unbelievable. He's a very good wrestler, high school wrestler, but he ends up in an automobile accident, and he has to start all over again. He's a walk on. He just decides to be a walk on at Penn State, and a lot of the names look sort of familiar.
Hmm.
Like Coach, I don't have Sanderson, but I have a name that sounds like Sanderson, that type of thing. And he uh, he works his way back into wrestling, and it's sort of a struggle. Uh, the comparison I use is, if you remember Ben Hogan, when he had that terrible crash with the bus where he protected his wife. They never thought he'd walk again. And then he went on to win two, I think, U.S. Open championships later on. And that's what kind of motivates him. But then he has another personal problem that occurs later, and you'll be surprised what he decides to do with that as well. But the ending is a surprise ending. My second novel is called The Novel Wrestler, and the reason it's called The Novel Wrestler is he's also a really, really, really great writer. He's a savant, and he's a very good wrestler. His brother and father were state champions, but his problem is he doesn't have that mental toughness. You have to be a great wrestler. You have to have a little bit of a mean spirit when you get on that man. He doesn't have that until something happens to him, and it changes his view on life. And his ending is very unusual. It's unexpected.
And your third book.
Yes, it's called One Wrestler's Courage, and it's about a wrestler who is from Eastern PA, but they live in the project areas. And what happens in his life? His mother is actually murdered by his stepbrother, who was on meth, who ended up actually shooting his mother and killing her. Then one of his other stepbrothers wants him to join their gang and sell drugs at the school. He won't do it because he's involved with the wrestling. Well, the gang members are beating him up in an alley, and his best friend on the team sees it, comes to run to help him, and is shot 3 times in the chest and is, killed. So the main character has to testify in court, and he gets them all put away for good. Unfortunately, the gang is not happy about it, so he goes under a witness protection plan. And from there, he starts a new life and a new wrestling career in a new town. Actually, he comes to Wheeling, West Virginia, and wrestles at Wheeling Central. And by the way, the wrestler in the cover is actually my step grandson, Martin, who's state champion from
You
those
move it
times.
on screen a little bit more, center it up a little bit more, so we can. There we go. All right, got it.
You
Up a
got
little
her?
bit more. Up a little bit more.
Yep.
Little bit more to right. Match it with your head right here. Yeah, there we
Okay.
go. All right. Okay. Gotcha.
Got
Okay,
it?
so yeah, you've got a dark premise on that one, and here's the thing: real life is not exactly sunshine and rainbows either. So
Right. Well, like it says
there's some
here,
real themes here.
yeah, from survival on the streets to success on the mats. And his ending's an unusual ending as
Mm-hmm.
well. It's a strange kind of ending, and it's actually something that actually did occur at one state, but I'm not going to say anything more about that. And finally, my last book called The Eyes of a Wrestler, and it's about a girl wrestler. And before I
Mm-hmm.
forget, so I don't get in trouble, the on the cover that is my granddaughter, Molly Brinker. Okay, I have her as the on the cover there, so I want to make sure I don't get in trouble with any family members. So I want to make
You
sure.
can't mention one, not the other. You got to make sure you got them all
Oh
covered on
my
the books.
gosh!
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Well, her story is her parents went to Temple, and they're from Pittsburgh, and they're both well-to-do. They're very well-to-do. And what happens is they stop at a red light, and two carjackers who are brothers, uh, try to get their car. They panic and they kill the mother and father in front of the main character, Johnsy, when she's sitting in the back seat. And they are the sons of a mafia boss in Philadelphia. So at the trial, they have the best lawyers and what have you, and they make her look like a fool. And the sons get away with it. So her only relatives are from Shamokin, PA. So she goes to live in Shamokin, and her uncle is a wrestler. He's a state champion wrestler, and he gets her involved in wrestling. But then they find out that she's a sharpshooter. She's a natural sharpshooter. Again, another savant, and she's very good at that too. She's excellent. She's unbelievable. So she's very good at, as she progresses. She's a state champion in wrestling. She wins all the rifle competitions. So she has to make a choice between. Uh, she decides to go to WVU, and I don't know, Jason, if you know
They
this,
have a rifle program.
which is unbelievable. National champion. They've won nationals like 17 different times. It's just unbelievable. So she has a chance for a full scholarship for wrestling or rifle. Okay, in rifle, I don't have to diet. I'll go with rifle. But she's still, she says, you know what? I want to enjoy my Christmas holidays for a change instead of watching my weight. But she did
Well,
tell the
that's
wrestling
like
coach,
every wrestler wants that. Every wrestler wants a chance to like not have to. They want Thanksgiving dinner. They want Christmas dinner. Save the heavyweights who actually get to eat. But yeah,
absolutely. So, but she does help out there, and there's some things happen where she ends up actually wrestling for him as well. In the meantime, the original detective on the case of her mother and father always kept them up to date. In the meantime, these two brothers end up becoming mafia bosses. Uh, and she's still not real happy. She always felt guilty that she couldn't do anything when this occurred with her parents. But before I mention that, there's one chapter called The Patriot, and she's actually recruited by a Navy SEALs team because their sniper was in an accident and there's nobody else around. She's that good at what she does. She's actually recruited for an assignment, a mission. I'll let that go. That's one of the things that are in it because she is so good at when it comes to sharpshooting, and she can distance doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, she has OCD and she can't get over what these two uh, brothers did to her parents. In the end, she has an opportunity to settle the score. Does she settle the score or not? You'd have to find out by buying the book. Now,
Bruce Wayne definitely settled the score in Batman for the same thing.
now let me get back to
Depends
what I
on
was
which version
saying.
of Batman you saw, by the way.
Right, right. Let me get back to marketing. I have no marketing. So my books are on Amazon. They're on Barnes and Barnes and Noble. No, yeah, Barnes and Noble, and you can actually browse Bill Welker books and get that on the internet as well. But my point is, without marketing, it's really tough to sell a book. I am fortunate. I have a producer, screenwriter who has all the books and is going to be working on that. See if somewhere down the road somebody might be interested in making one of them into a movie. But like I said, there's very few books, novels out there just about wrestling in terms of high school and college.
Yeah, I've come across a few. Of course, we mentioned, people know the movie Vision Quest more than they know the book. Other ones that I've got, I'm just looking over at I had Ron Lang on the show, the most recent episode. He just wrote a book called Matt Return, which is a
Right.
collection of stories from around the states. And I was talking about the number of books I've got. I've probably got maybe 50 to 100 wrestling books, but again, a lot of them are history. We've got things about the Olympic movement with like Saving Olympic Wrestling. Tim Foley and Craig
Right.
Sesker did various books, and we've got Rob Sherrill. I have Tales from the Mat. Rob Sherrill has a history of Illinois wrestling that is like this thick. It's like I mean, Bibles are looking at this thing going, man, that's a big book.
Right.
We've got things like Wrestling Sturbridge, which
it scares a lot of coaches because coaches aren't a lot of coaches. I don't want to say that they're not readers, but a lot of wrestling coaches are more physical than they are.
I'm
Like
a notoriously slow reader. When you also have a memoir that you wrote about, and that's how I learned a lot about you. It's not just your Hall of Fame bio, which by the way, you're in what, 5 Hall of Fames now?
yes,
Yeah, so this
yes,
guy's kind of a big deal. He has many leather-bound books. The amount of again, I'm a notoriously slow reader. So when I got the Sparrow Spirit, what I loved about it was you didn't make it. It wasn't. For lack of a better say, it wasn't a novel. It was a good breakdown of what was important to you and the stories in your wrestling life. So I got to know who Dr. Bill Welker was by reading this book. And it was a great lake book. It's a book. All right, we're done fishing. I'm going to sit in a recliner by the window and sit down and take an hour to read. And you just blow through it. I'm not saying it took an hour to read. I'm saying in sections you can go through, and it's not a long read, and it's a great read because it's one of those things where I've heard of this person. I know this person, and I'm going to sit there and you just want story after, like, I want to know. And then wow, what, I mean, and just things you're adding to your wrestling life after you get the memoir done. That's like, do I do a part 2?
well, I was brutally honest about my college career, if you remember correctly.
Well, my
I
high school career, you could fit on a Post-it note. It involved no starting matches. So, yeah, I was,
well,
anyway. So
like
yeah.
the problem we had back then is we were not taught how to diet, and we did every unsavory thing you could possibly do to diet. I mean, it was just terrible. And to be honest with you, I didn't lose my desire for wrestling. I got tired of the dieting.
Mhm.
It was just too much. Then I was also corrupted by the city of Pittsburgh, small time town boy going to the big city. It corrupted me, I have to say. Now
So
that I'm back in
West
smaller,
Virginia's more your style.
yes, 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 yes.
Well,
My behavior became better when I came down here.
now you brought up an interesting point about the dieting and such. And I was recently on a show with Mike Malanconico and talking about marketing and talking about why isn't wrestling, what we can do to make wrestling more fun, more popular and whatnot. And I pointed out a lot of it, the ire with wrestling was kind of the sins of the father, was kind of what it was the old, like you talked about, you didn't have the education, know how to cut weight. The old styles and systems just became the way. And the way was, you have to be tough. You have to, it is a sport. It's a sport of suffering. It is. I mean, the
Right. Oh,
return on
absolutely.
investment in terms of the time you put in versus your success rate really isn't skewed to your favor. It's like you don't come out for wrestling and very few are instantly good. You have to constantly
No.
work at it. You have to work at it. And then you factor in the weight cuts. Then you factor in the old style of weight cuts. Those, thankfully, we've got systems now that prevent a lot of that. There's still probably one kid for every team that has the worst weight cut on the team because he's making the sacrifice because he's probably better at it. But high school kids still don't really do it well. And we're also seeing some of our better wrestlers now, the elite wrestlers that are coming through. I mean, obviously, Bo Bassett and Jax Forrest made headlines recently with their commitments. Those kids aren't cutting their butt off. They're wrestling their weight. They're growing. They're wrestling where they're comfortable. It's more about learning technique. So let's go back in time to your day. Like, what do you think the kids do now and the coaches do now that are making the sport better, but we still need to find a way to shake the misconceptions of what wrestling was 50 years ago to what it is now, which is a healthier sport. It's a sport that really shows the benefits of physical fitness. And how do we bring kids in these days, do you think? Even though you're an old school guy, but the sport has changed. So how do we make sure it's fun again?
Well, part of like I said, the big thing is the dieting. And I was involved back in 2006. We wrote up a weight management program for West Virginia, and they're doing it in all the states. And the key is, okay, you can only, if you're going to lose, just lose a couple pounds. Enjoy the sport. Enjoy the sport. Uh, let's say you're, what is it, 106? Let's say you weigh 110. You could probably lose that weight just by practicing. That's not, that's what they're doing today. They're maybe losing 3 or 4 or 5 pounds, which is nothing. But wrestling's a tough sport,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And it's a tough sell. It's a tough sell because uh, when I was growing up, we actually went and visited our friend's house. Okay, we went out of the house. Uh, when I was growing up, it was hard to get on the basketball court because everybody
You
was
mean
trying to
you
get
mean
on it.
you weren't just texting your friends and playing
Exactly.
whatever?
That's the problem. That's the problem we have today. It's a lot easier, and there's so many distractions. It's a lot easier to say, let's see, do I want to go on a wrestling mat and sweat, or pretend I'm wrestling on a computer? Like, you think about uh, today, like I noticed, like in our local basketball courts outside or baseball fields, if there's not a regular game, there's no pickup games. Uh, there's nobody on the courts, like they used to when my kids were growing up. You had to fight to get on the court. It's a tough sell with wrestling. So when you get a
Mm-hmm.
kid who's going to wrestle, you got a kid who's probably going to give you everything he or she has. And by the way, girls wrestling has been a big factor in a resurgence of wrestling altogether, and they are doggone good. I have one friend, son was two-time state champion, West Virginia, went to an open tournament, wrestled a girl. This was years ago, 2 years ago. He kicked the baloney out of him. It was that outstanding. Uh, these girls are unbelievable. I mean, it's the best thing that's happened to wrestling in years. But as far as coming out for wrestling, we just have to build the positives of
Mm-hmm.
wrestling, the self-discipline part of it, the great conditioning part of it, the skill part of it, and emphasize, all of that, and just how much it can do for them for the rest of their lives. That's the key there.
To that point, now again, I want to go back to kind of my point about the sins of the father. I know that there are people, and I'm not singling out your age demographic, but there are people from your generation that were that there are people my age as coaches for a long time, and we're seeing that there was the pushback on girls wrestling. We didn't accept girls wrestling really. I mean, FILA didn't have a world championships till the late '80s. It did become we became an NCAA championship sport this year, but we've had college women's championships for 20 years. High school
Mhm.
didn't, the first high school wasn't until the late 90s again, but girls have been wrestling since the 70s, but it wasn't widely accepted. Why was there, in your opinion, from what you'd seen, Western PA and West Virginia, and why do you think there was pushback on letting the girls wrestle so many years ago?
Old school, old school, old culture. Hey, it's a boy sport. Hey, do you remember you used to hear this? You remember the saying, "Girls play basketball." We used to say that, but you know,
Yeah, girls play
boys
basketball, boys wrestle. Yeah.
only boys wrestle. But I think part of it that started happening was that, at least in our area, in our small fry program, when it first came out, if a girl wanted to wrestle, she could come out. She could come
Mhm.
out as a small fry wrestler and compete with the boys, and that grew and grew, and that may be part of how you know coaches are starting to look and say, "Wait a minute, she's not too bad. This girl knows how to wrestle."
I remember one of the first girls that I ever came across with success. I started breaking in, late '90s. It was Erica Dye, and she was in the West
Yes,
Virginia State Finals, I believe. And I remember her. She was one of those first, like in that Mary Kelly era. I'm like, she didn't wrestle very much freestyle. I don't believe so, but she did a lot of
she did.
the kid.
She did for a little bit. I think she even went overseas and wrestled in a tournament or two. Uh,
Yeah, and I remember
but
the USGWA, what Kent Balo had with the U.S. Girls Wrestling Association. That was like the huge push, again, late 90s. And I remember Erica Dye was one of the first girl wrestlers I remember,
yes,
especially because she was from West Virginia. I'm like, well, I'm a border state. So, and it was a non traditional wrestling state that had somebody excelling in a non-traditional situation where you had it's like Deanna Ricks when she was coming out of Maine as a state runner-up.
yeah,
So there was those early trailblazers against the boys, and I remember that's one name I will always associate with. I'd mentioned Braxton Amos, the Easters,
that's the
Mitch
early
Smith.
years too.
I remember, like, I will equate her name with West Virginia wrestling for as long as I live. So, a shout out there. But
Yeah,
going back to that growth, what have you seen from the growth of the girls at the high school level now? Because we've got a state championship there. It's got a space on WVMat.com. We're starting to see placers in Fargo. It's growing, and what we've learned is, one girl doesn't want to wrestle a bunch of boys, but you get 4 or 5 girls out there, they're going to bring 4 or 5 more, and all of a sudden you've got a room full.
right. The we're getting it started here in West Virginia, and it's going very well, and it's growing each year. It's growing. More and more girls are coming out, and more teams are we're starting to get more teams, more high schools starting the wrestling program. Now we still have high schools where the girls have to go out for the boys team.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't they don't have a girls wrestling program, but that's slowly uh, changing. That's slowly changing. I'd say within the next 10 years, you're going to see just about every high school have girls in West Virginia. And we're a smaller state, too. We can do it.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I will say that the travel there it's like, Southwest Virginia, for example, to go from Virginia Tech to Grundy is not a straight shot. It's you gotta go around some mountains and such. West Virginia
oh,
travel has
yes.
got to be a little bit dicey in the wintertime too, with just the mountainous state of it. But let's talk about West Virginia a little bit. I mean, it just seems like it's one of those states that you figure like, oh, well, they've got to be that's a tough state. They should naturally be attracted to wrestling. What is it about that makes West Virginia wrestling great for you?
Uh, I think, again, getting back, you're talking about steel
Mhm.
workers, old miners, tough-minded type of individuals who kind of instill that in their sons and daughters, a sense of toughness, a sense of believing in yourself and going after what you want. Uh, it's like working class.
Mm.
Okay, it's working class because they were miners and because they were in the steel mills. They had to work hard, to make a living, and they taught their kids, "You got to work hard if you want to be good in school, good in athletics. Work. It's not easy. Life's not fair. You have to work harder." I think that's the kind of mindset that the West Virginia kids, especially those who are still in areas where the mines are going strong and what have you. That kind of mindset that makes them pretty good wrestlers, makes them pretty good wrestlers. Uh, Peyton Hall's doing a good job.
He's having a pretty good season. He's been on
No,
that podium a couple times.
yes. You know what's funny about that? I have Bill Welker OVAC Wrestlers of the Year, and since 38th year now. He was the same year as Braxton Amos. Any other year, Peyton would have been the wrestler of the year. It was the same year that was a senior.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Peyton just totally dedicated himself to, to wrestling. I guess this year he's going for his. Hopefully, he will be an All American again this year. It'll be his third All American trip. Hopefully, great kid, super kid. And I think Tim Flynn's doing a great job at WVU as well. And he's got it tough. He's between Ohio State, Pitt, and Penn State. As far as recruiting, uh, Tim does a great job under those conditions.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty tough. Competing against schools like that, like Ohio and Pennsylvania. With the Pitt and Penn State. Well, Penn State's a machine. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they're unbelievable. Uh, Penn State to be a one-time national champion is no big deal. I mean, it's unbelievable. Just amazing.
When we look at what's next for you, you've spent a lifetime in this sport, going back to Western PA and then spending all this time in the Wheeling area, West Virginia, and then writing novels, writing drill books, writing columns, being just kind of somebody that's you've gotten Sports Writer of the Year awards. You've been a constant presence, not just in West Virginia but nationally. You're a recognized name. As you get to, I mean, your pat. I mean, wrestling coaches and wrestling people never really retire, but as
Oh,
you're in your retirement years, what is left for Dr. Bill Welker to accomplish in the sport? What is next for you?
just to promote it whenever I can. Still involved with. We have the OVAC. It's a Ohio Valley Athletic Conference. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually the biggest conference in the United States. I'm still heavily involved in that. Sorry, I stopped this year, but I would pick the officials to do the finals. I'd always make sure that that the official doing the final has no association at all with either
Mm-hmm.
school, and it's had no problems. You know, uh, I do want to talk about two experiences I had as a state interpreter. I had one experience where this one boy, I think he had some type of diabetes. So he had to eat a little bit before he weighed in for the Saturday morning at States.
Mm-hmm.
He was 3/10 of a pound over. Okay. And the coaches are saying, well, he had to do this and he had to do that. And the official said, you're going to have to talk to Dr. But, and what made it even more difficult, not only was the coach there, but the mother was there too. And I had to say no.
Mm-hmm.
I had to say no. If I would have said yes, then next year somebody had the flu and had to drink some water. He's only 2/10 of a pound over. But you gave that kid a break the year before. And we're old school. The 11th commandment, thou shalt not make weight 3/10 pound over. Okay. And, oh, and I even got a nasty letter from his caregiver, but you know what? Would I make the same decision today? Yes.
I mean,
Now,
those situations definitely got to stink. I mean, because you feel for the kid, but again, you set a precedent that can be exploited. Nobody wants to do that.
no. And that's what it boiled down to. Then we had one other cute one where the boy is wrestling for third and fourth, clobbering the other kid, but he doesn't like the opposing coach. So when he wins the match, he flips the bird to the opposing coach, and the official hits him with flagrant misconduct. Okay. So anyway, the boys' coach comes over to the coach goes to the official. Anything I knew about that? He even talked to Dr. Welker, and coach came over and pleaded for his kid. I said, if I allow that, what's next? If I would allow that, because everybody, what happened was when they raised his hand, that's when he flipped the bird. Everybody saw. I mean, the whole stadium, the whole facility saw.
Yeah,
And
he
the
was
coach,
not definitely saying you're number one. That's for sure.
but turns out pretty good. Coach was actually his father, and he handled it very well. I have to tell you that he handled it very well. In the next 2 years, his sophomore and junior year, the boy wins states. His senior year, he's losing, and the official that had his match as a freshman was sitting there beside me. He said, "Watch it. He's going to lose it again." I looked at the official. I said, "No, he's not." After the match, when he lost, he hugged his opponent. He hugged his opponent because he learned his lesson as a freshman.
Teachable moments.
Yes.
I say this too. My wife says life's about choices, and sometimes a lot of people say that, but one thing is just life is complicated. Deal with it. Life's about choices, and life's about those choices have consequences. So you make the decision. Guess what? Don't think you're going to get away with it too. And again, this is maybe also a little bit of that old school, but it's like it's logical. You did something that was unsportsmanlike. You're going to get penalized for it. The levels of severity are what they are. Can you learn something from it? Great. So, again, the fact that painting the rule book is the problem. No, that's not the problem. You break the rule. It's not the rules. It's not the rule's fault.
Yeah. There are many.
This is our collective get off our lawn moment, by the way. We're sharing the get off my lawn moment.
Right. Now, to get back to your original question of as much as I can, I talk about wrestling wherever I'm at right now. My wife and I are both going through some health issues right now, and that's kind of keeping us busy in that respect. But I right now with the OVAC or the state, I still do a lot of their biographies of like different people they want in the program. I'll write up their biography or award winners and what have you, and still do an article here and there. I just got done completing an article on profanity in scholastics. It's been published in a number of newspapers in West Virginia. I'll send you a copy of it.
That would be an interesting read because, be quite honest with you, my wife, again, she's a grounding presence, but she will always know when I come back from a wrestling tournament because my language is not what it is around the house. It takes me a day to readjust based on just my conversations away from, obviously I'm not saying that stuff on the microphone when I'm announcing an event, but I'm at the pub or I'm at a dinner, we're not the cleanest of speakers. So I'm curious about that. I am curious about that. So yes, please do send
I will
that
send
one
you the
along.
article. I'll send you the article on it. It's I was mainly concerned about wrestler profanity. Well, during the course of a meet or what have you.
Well, a couple years ago, actually, it's probably closer to a decade ago now. The late Sandy Cagio, a longtime official in Ohio, NCAA official, Chris Brown from my alma mater was wrestling Mark Perry from Iowa at a match at St. Edward. It was at St. Ed's gym, and the match was favored Perry. He got the major decision, but the match favored Brown, excuse me, and then Perry allegedly, I think this is what happened, according to Sandy, he cussed the official or said something, and then Sandy disqualified him. And that goes to kind of one of these teachable moments. It's like, and at the other point, Coach Bart at ODU didn't want the disqualification to stick because they wanted the result. They wanted the major. They wanted to see the result instead of the DQ. So it's funny. No, keep it. So it's kind of funny how that can work. That can work in the other direction sometimes.
Yes, because nobody knows. Hey, here's what he did to him. Here's, but you don't know when it's DQ.
Anyway, yeah. I would be curious on that because that's something I know at personal growth and personal maturity. I need to curse less.
I've been noticing it more and more, and in some respects, I blame some of the coaches because I think they're allowing it a little bit too much.
Boys will be boys.
But there's a place for it. There's a place for it because if you give a little bit, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that is my concern in that article. But I will get that to you. You might want to mention it in another one of your programs.
Yeah, I may even throw it in the old into the
newsletter. Jason, you can actually go into the internet and just put profanity and scholastic sports.
All right, profanity and scholastic sports.
Yes, it's you can actually read it there on a couple of newspapers.
All right, I will look for that. So, anything else you want to plug before we go, Bill? What do you got?
Not too much, except that wrestling's been my life, but I also am a firm believer in the academics, the student athlete, and I'd like to see more of the student athlete that we had in the past. Of course, it's in all sports. Don't get me wrong, football, basketball, what have you. Like I say, when we went with the scholarship, we went there. Yeah, we did our job on the mat, but we also we knew we wanted to graduate, and usually in 4 years. Now that like you were loafing around for 7 years. It's terrible.
Yes,
I'm ashamed of you, Jason. Get your act together.
I had 3 choices. I had a book to read for class, I had a beer to drink, and I had a website to update. I picked 2 of the 3. You can only pick 2. You can't have all 3. You got to pick 2. So I was going to drink the beer and update Mad Talk. I eventually figured out going to class was the important thing.
Fortunately for me, I didn't have the computer, so I could do the 2. Read the book.
Yeah. Another downfall of technology. My 7-year tenure at that school in Norfolk. Oh man. Anyway, Dr. Bill, it's been a great conversation. I know we've traded emails for years, but it's good to sit there and hear your opinions and to see the evolution of wrestling through your eyes and the evolution of books and just general. I mean, just everything that you're a man of all levels and places and things in this sport. So your time in the sport is appreciated by me. I've read your stuff for years and appreciate everything you've done for us. And
thank you. I appreciate
hopefully there's
that.
a lot more of that coming from you.
Like I said, I still speak at different places and what have you. I try to get the kids motivated. I'm just excited about my step grandson wrestling and doing so well. The sport, like I said, been part of our family since 1938 when my cousin Harold Welker won first state championship in Pennsylvania that they had. So it's been a tradition of the whole family, and I love my native state of Pennsylvania, and I love my adopted state of West Virginia. I'm so proud to be a Pitt Panther and a WVU Mountaineer.
Yeah, that must be fun during the backyard battle. Backyard brawl. Is it the brawl or battle?
Backyard brawl.
Brawl. Yeah. I just like when they play Sweet Caroline at WVU games because that clip is always fun. Anyway, having spent time at both campuses, I've enjoyed both of them. But again, Dr. Bill Welker, been a pleasure, and you're always welcome back on the show whenever you want to come on.
Okay, and thank you for having me, and thank you for the great job you do for the sport of wrestling. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
You take
Means
care,
a lot
Jason.
coming from you.
Okay, take care, buddy.